gentlemen, boys and girls, we have a very special guest today. We're gonna take a little turn off of COVID. We've got a new bachelorette, Claire, who's coming out on Tuesday, and we have somebody that was actually on Claire's season, Kat Hurd. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dr. Larry. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's really good to see you. So, why are you here? I was listening to you on a podcast, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and you talked about something that I thought was really remarkable and worth talking about, and it's so different than the times today. We're going to get into that. That's a little bit of the teaser.
All right.
But tell us a little bit about yourself. I think is the way you put it to me earlier. Who is this girl?
Yeah. Who the hell is this girl and why is she on this show? So like you said, I was on Claire's season, which happens to be Juan Pablo's season. And if you watch the recap of that season, were you with him with Juan Pablo? Oh my
Juan
gosh.
Pablo, so you were on the
Talk
season
about this.
after.
Yeah.
I was going to say we have somebody in common, and that person is Juan Pablo.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So,
you and Claire were on. I don't know if everybody listening to this knows this. I was on The Bachelorette. It's a very dirty part of my history.
ooh,
But we don't talk
dirty
about
secret.
But today we're here to talk about Kat Hurd and her incredible philanthropy. But I was on Juan Pablo's season, and so both you and Claire and all those other gals, I think Andy ended up being the Bachelorette from your season.
Yes. Yeah.
Mine was 2013 Desiree. That's 7 years ago.
I know. Mine was 6 years ago. I'm like, seems like just yesterday. But yeah, so I was on the show in 2014. Feels like forever ago, but also just yesterday. And it's interesting because like how I ended up on the show and in this world is really because two people that were on the season with you were people that I knew. And so I started watching Desiree's season, and night one, I was like, oh, there's Drew, the bartender that like I've known forever and had a huge crush on when he worked at the W. And truth be told, I was actually watching the season because my boyfriend, or I guess ex-boyfriend, just recently at that time, his best friend from high school and like elementary school was on the show. And the way he told the story was that,
Who was that?
oh my gosh, Robbie. Graham. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny, I almost like totally forgot his name, but so his best friend from high school is a little dirty little secret of someone I dated, Richie Incognito. So if you know anything about the Miami Dolphins, he was involved in that really horrible bullying scandal, and he was a wonderful person until he switched personalities, very much a Jekyll and a Hyde.
This is somebody that you dated?
Yeah, I dated
wow.
Bobby's best friend. So he turned out to be a psycho, and we shocker.
How long did it take you to figure that out?
It was I would say we dated for a couple of months, and then he went totally crazy, just like flipped gears. He was a great boyfriend at the very start of it. So
that's like get to know somebody, you give it time and true colors come out.
Exactly. So, but I had gotten to know Bobby, and the way Richie was telling the story is that Bobby got sent home because he had met Desiree when he slept with her roommate and didn't remember meeting Desiree. And so sorry, my employees are calling me right now.
As soon as it gets juicy,
I
reaching out and shutting you down.
My employees are calling me. They're like, I got questions. So I wanted to see the drama unfold because I was like, those two are jerks. They were such like shit talkers. And so that's why I watched the show in the first place. And then I started texting Drew and was like, hey, did you I had no idea you did this. And he's like, oh yeah, it was awesome. And I had a few girlfriends that were like, oh, I want to nominate you for The Bachelor. And so long story long, I went to a casting call, and I kid you not, like I aside from Trista's season, I had never watched the show. I'm sure there are women, well, I saw the women at the casting call who like, it's their life dream to be on the show. And I walked in, did my little like interview for the camcorder, and I'm walking, and this producer like was walking past me. If you ever met Lacey Pemberton, who was one of the like the casting producers,
He was the
walking
casting
past me.
director.
Yeah, she grabbed
Yeah.
me and was like, "Did you go already?" And I was like, "Yeah." I have no idea who this lady is. She's like, "Got a plate of pizza." I'm like, "Do you work for the hotel?" Like, I don't even understand. And so she pulls me in, introduces me to all of these other like casting directors, and then I do a full length interview, and like they're like, "Okay, so do you think you can take 8 weeks off work?" Like, I don't.
Bam, they wanted you.
Yeah, it was so weird. So and then you may have heard this from any of the other like podcasts I've been on, but I told them no. So I went through all the casting. I went to the California casting weekend because my best girlfriend from college lives in California. And so I was like, oh, free trip, like no big deal. And I got home and I just thought, this isn't like me. I don't know that I really want to do this. And I had just made the Phoenix Suns dance team. So I was like, I'm going to stay here and be on the dance team.
Oh,
And
okay.
I was 29 at the time, and so it's like that was something for me that was like a lifelong like childhood dream. Whereas The Bachelor, I was like, this is just like that's just kind of a weird thing to do. But I landed on The
You're
Bachelor.
you're normal. You're normal.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know. I don't know if that's
Well,
me, but
it's
I
probably
ended up on the show.
probably why they wanted you. They're like, oh my God, she's from the
Yeah.
Midwest and she's like normal and cute. Like, get that girl. And she doesn't want to be on the show. Even better. Like, we want her even.
Yeah. Yeah. So landed on the show because actually of some work stuff. My job told me I couldn't do the Suns. So I said, screw it. I'm going on TV.
Oh,
And
that's kind of heartbreaking.
yeah, like it all worked out. And I know we're going to get into this, but like the platform that I had and some, kind of still do have actually from the show was something I had no idea of because I didn't watch the show and I didn't know how like just absorbed people were in Bachelor Nation. And I didn't know that was even a thing. And so I'm very grateful for, the opportunities that it's given me to actually like do some good in the world and make an impact. So I think in the long run, it really has been a positive. But I was sad I didn't get to do the Suns for sure.
I didn't. I remember seeing this picture of you in a Suns, I don't know, uniform or outfit or whatever, and I didn't know that you never got to do that. That
Yeah,
must have been kind of difficult around this whole thing. Like, so if you could have done the Suns, you wouldn't have done The Bachelor,
probably. Yeah.
and you never did the Suns because of work.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Something else I wanted to say, and I want to say this for the people listening. This is going to be a little different than your regular kind of Bachelor recap um, podcast because you went not on like a crazy social media fame run, but you raised a ton of money for charity doing this.
Yeah.
That's the spoiler, and used your platform really for good, for a great cause, and that's what we're going to talk about. I just want to kind of plant that as we tell this story. The other thing that came to mind as you were talking was I didn't realize this either. I had watched that show. I had female roommates, and we watched The Bachelor all the time, and we made fun of everybody. And I do not make fun of those people like I used to. Let me put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I didn't realize until I went on the show, to echo what you said, it is a really big deal to some people. There is no,
Hmm.
like, if somebody were to bump into you right after that season, there is no more famous or desirable person to meet in their entire life. Like, there are some
Yeah.
people that is the ultimate. And I was like, wow, like, there are true crazy super fans with that show. It's incredible. It's a thing. It's like a thing.
Yeah. It's a thing, and until you're in it and like you're in the fishbowl that everyone wants to like squeeze their face against the glasses of, you don't realize what it's like and what that magnitude is. I mean, maybe if you're a big super fan yourself, but I have to imagine like those probably are pretty few and far between to get cast. So it's a surreal experience. And I can only imagine like our season was right. And I know we've talked about this before and I'm sure we'll dig into it, but our season was right before social media really became a thing. Like my season was the start of the like sugar bear hair gummies and like those sorts of things, which is how I landed on fundraising because I saw people like schlepping weird stuff on Instagram. I was like, that's not my thing.
Wait a minute.
But
What is
now
sugar bear? What? I don't remember that.
the sugar bear hair gummies. So that's like so females that have been on Instagram for a while will know what I'm talking about because that was their little like vitamins. I'm sure they have a ton of biotin in them. They're
Oh,
supposed to be like
okay.
hair and nail gummy vitamins. And
Oh,
so
okay.
they were one of the first brands to really push on the Bachelor franchise and do like sponsored content.
Oh, okay.
So, and it was just like a flood. I don't even know if they still exist anymore, but that was, for me at least, the one that was memorable. Like we got off the season and then you started seeing everyone with their like little gummies, these like little blue, they're cute. And supposedly they tasted good. I never tried them, but I wanted to do something different.
Yeah, but let's talk. But this is a good point. Let's talk about that for a minute. Those are basically little paychecks, so they're getting paid money, whatever it was. Some
Hmm.
people get like $5,000 per post, depending on how many followers you have.
Yeah.
On my season, similar to yours, there was no social media, zero during the whole, you know, when the show, before the show, when it was coming out.
Hmm.
We had some people that would send a tweet or whatever, and the producers would send these really nasty emails threatening, you're never going to do anything ever again. Da, 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 da. Like they were so against social media and they couldn't totally control it. And it sounds like it was similar for you. I was wondering, like,
Hmm.
because it changed. I thought it changed right after us, but I guess you couldn't do much either.
Yeah, we had to deactivate our accounts obviously when we went on the show. And I
Yeah,
want to say I'd have to look back through my timeline, but I don't think we were allowed to post until after the season had aired.
that's
And
what it was like.
stories weren't a thing. And so it was all like stationary, like posts on your feed.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was very regulated. I mean, I think that was before they knew what an engine, I mean, before any of us really knew what an engine like Instagram and, just like that piece of social media was going to be. So they felt like they could insulate people from it. Now they have to embrace it. Like there's no way. And that's part of the culture and part of the je ne sais quoi of The Bachelor is like social media is like afterwards.
Yeah, it's so funny. I don't want to get into too much Bachelor history because it's not the focus of this thing. But I think at our time, they were more worried about things getting leaked. It was more of a
Hmm.
liability of, oh man, we don't want them to screw up. Who goes home when? Shut it all down. They couldn't control that. And then they realized, gosh, if we partner with this, like we can promote the show better by putting
Yeah.
these people out there. And then, but I think also what it's turned into, and this is very relevant to what we're talking about here, is there have always been people on The Bachelor that have been there for the wrong reasons, whether it's like self promotion or to kickstart an acting or modeling career. And now I think you go on the show and you last a while, you can come out with 500,000, a million followers on Instagram, and you can monetize that. You can make money on that
Right.
following and talk about like, so the kind of person that is naturally just going to gravitate toward this. Wow, I kind of feel a little bit for the lead bachelor, bachelorette, like Claire. Like, how do you sort through that? Like people who are actually there and open to something versus people who are way more interested in growing their Instagram following.
Yeah, and not to get too much into Claire, but that's so, if you remember her tweet to Matt James, because he was supposed to be on her season, and then she fired at him because he was already on Cameo before like they'd even obviously started filming. So he's not part of the Bachelor franchise yet, but on Cameo, which is, doing fan shout outs and all of that. So she like made some tweet about like respecting the process and respecting her. Now, the irony of then they pull Matt James out and he becomes the next bachelor, and then Claire doesn't technically respect the process and only, goes through like 3 rose ceremonies before she runs off with someone.
Anyway,
It's
so
common knowledge. It is a spoiler though, so you can cut that out.
I don't know how to edit these things. We're gonna glaze over that. Anyway, so forget the things said
You
about
can
Claire.
totally
So
add those things.
Yeah, I know, but I don't know how to do it. So anyway,
Hey, you got a new computer. That's going to be your weekend project. Yeah.
you totally spoiled everything.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Okay, so let's get back to your story. So they cast you, and you're kind of coming off a disappointment of not being able to do this lifehood dream of be with the Suns. Why did you decide to do The Bachelor?
So for me, I was very upset initially about not being able to do the Suns because, like you said, lifelong dream. And I just figured, you know what? Screw it. Like I was upset with work, and they told me like you can go on The Bachelor, but we don't want you to do the Suns. And I was like, I don't
A little
really
bit funny,
understand.
right?
Yeah, just a little odd. So, yeah, I was like, fine, I'll go on The Bachelor. And, again, like long run, it really worked out. It's been something that, I've been incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to make a difference. And, you kind of talked a little bit about the money that I've been able to raise for charity, but it's money and a platform I wouldn't have had otherwise. So, it definitely turned out for the better, but it didn't necessarily feel like that in the moment.
What did it feel like in the moment?
In the moment, I was like just frustrated with work. I felt like I didn't see the difference. For them, it was a short term distraction versus a long term distraction. And so I had every intent of leaving, doing filming, and then coming home and finding a new job. Um, I did not find a new job. I'm actually still with the same company. And whoops. But I also,
What do
it was
you what,
interesting.
go ahead.
I manage a sales team for a medical device company. And so I was in the field as a sales rep. I do implants for chronic pain patients. So anyone, kind of like the equivalent of like when hit your funny bone and you rub your elbow to try to make it
Mhm.
feel better. So we implant devices that provide a gentle massaging sensation. The patient feels that instead of their normal pain. So anyway, I did that for 7
Distraction
years.
on C fibers.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you can get into the medical side of it. I'm not going to touch that. But for me, I came back from the show and I just, it was almost like karmic momentum. I started doing all of this fundraising and I was really busy with that. And then work started snowballing, right, and gaining all of this momentum. And I had really 2 great sales years following the show. I finished first in our company my last year as a sales rep, and then I've been managing our team for the last 4 years. So really, if you look at it, like The Bachelor was actually this inflection point for me in probably in some ways in like stepping into my own presence and deciding what was important to me. And that's a lot of where the fundraising efforts came from, because it wasn't important to me to be like hawking something on Instagram and getting a paycheck for it. I looked at it and said, well, if these people want to be around me and if these people want to pay me, then to be around me, I started hosting these charity viewing parties because I saw that, wait, I can capitalize this on this, and I don't need the money. I don't want the money. I have a job. But what if I could do something where that money went to a good cause? So it started as this singular viewing party that I was doing for just season premiere of the show. And it snowballed into something that really had a life bigger than its own.
Where did that idea start? Where did you get the idea to do that? And was that in Phoenix? Tell me about that first one. I
Yeah. So
loved
the
it,
first
by the
one,
way. This is like exactly why I wanted to interview you about this. Is like,
yeah.
where did this idea come from? Where did you get that idea? Why did you not want to like 1 million followers on social media and all that?
Yeah, I don't think at that time I even knew you could have 1 million followers on social media, and I definitely had more than I do now. And I had a girlfriend recently challenge me on that and say, you like, because I said I don't need a bunch of followers and I don't need people paying me to do things. I want to go like make a difference and raise money for charity. And she said, but what if you did that? What if you took, built your following and took your sponsored content and took that money and also donated it to charity? So maybe I missed, right? I missed an opportunity to do even more good. But I looked at it. I enjoy. I've been a performer my whole life. I've been dancing since probably before I could walk. I'm someone who's comfortable in the spotlight, but it's not something for me that, when I looked at it, like I don't need it to feel good about myself. But what I realized, what was really cool, is I could help other people do good and feel good. So it was okay if I spend, I did a viewing party at a sorority house. I'm an Alpha Phi. And so we went to the Alpha Phi house and watched there. And so being able to be with those women and provide, maybe just a little bit of inspiration, even in doing conversations and having conversations like this. Like if someone takes something out of it and says, I want to go raise money, or I want to go donate my time, right? Because there's so many different ways that you can create an impact. But I'm totally taking us off the rails here. So how did the first one start? You and I have a mutual friend, Brianna out of San Francisco, California, and she has built a really incredible engine that is the Mr. Marina competition. And Mr. Marina has raised over $1 million for charity in,
Which
I think,
is so great.
6 seasons. It's
awesome.
It's incredible. I mean, I look at it, and I've raised just right around 175,000 for charity, and I feel proud of that.
That is awesome.
And she's raised 5 times that, and she built this engine. And so seeing what she did for LLS, and at that time, actually, when I went on the show a few months before it, my mom was diagnosed with breast cancer, with stage 4 breast cancer.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and with thank you, and with leukemia. So she has chronic lymphocytic leukemia. And so I was actually, while I was filming, she was undergoing chemo, which sometimes I judge myself for leaving when she was doing that. She and I had a lot of conversations about it. But so it was something that was really timely for me. I saw Brianna and what she was able to do. And she, her father, hopefully, and it's common knowledge, I think she talks about that a lot with the Mr. Marina competition, but she was raising money in honor of her dad. And I looked at it and I thought, well, what if I could do something in honor of my mom? I stepped away from her treatment and being by her side when I was gone at filming. So how do I support her now? And that first viewing party, I have to give credit to International, the bar that's in downtown Scottsdale, that let us.
Hang on just a second. There's so many questions. Let me just interrupt you for a minute. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, please.
I don't know, did Brianna's father die of lymphoma? I don't know.
No, he's doing great. So CLL, as you know, it's more managed than it is really deadly most often. So
yes, CLL. Okay.
Yeah. So he has CLL. My mom has CLL, and so she's, he's doing really tremendous, and she's still very active with the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society.
That makes so much sense, and it's personal.
Mm-hmm.
Can I ask you about your mom? I'm sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Part of the story. There's now it makes total sense. Like this is something that's close to your heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's doing very well.
Your mom's alive.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah,
thank God.
Yeah.
For breast cancer, and that many years ago, I was like, oh my God. I hope everything's okay.
Yeah, she did. She's a fighter, really, truly. And so she's an ICU nurse. So not only is she fine, but she's so stubborn and just so bullheaded that she's been working this whole time through COVID. Like, will you go home? Will you go home and stay home and lock the doors? But she has been, God. And she's an ICU nurse. And so finally, after a lot of begging and pleading, she got herself transferred to a COVID-free unit, but she's been working this whole time, and healthy and thankfully in remission. So very grateful for that. Thank you for asking.
That's really good to hear, and good for her for continuing to work. My goodness, she's certainly not in a low risk job, the ICU, and B, still working, even in a COVID-free unit. But that's awesome. I didn't know that. You and I have that in common. My mother was an ICU nurse, and she taught nursing for a long time as well. So very cool. That is that's great. Okay, so back to where were you in the story? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted the questions to pile up, and
no, they were good.
Or a time or two, so I think you can fly through it. I just wanted to. Where were we? So you got
we were talking at first
where
event.
Where was the first event?
First event was in Scottsdale. So where I live now, in Scottsdale, and I hosted it in Old Town Scottsdale. I have a friend who owns a bar, and he was gracious enough to let us host it there free of charge. And my closest girlfriends, a group of them, flew in for the event, helped me organize and execute all of it. And we just said, hey, let's host a viewing party. And I think I charged like $25, tickets on Eventbrite, which does Eventbrite even exist anymore in this day and age? And since none of us can go anywhere.
We're so old. I'll speak for
I know. I'm right there with you. But yeah, so we hosted it in Scottsdale, and we had a huge turnout. That night we raised $6,000 for this John C. Lincoln, the hospital network out in Arizona, their breast health and research center. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was really
$6,000
cool because,
like, that's a nice chunk of change.
yeah, it was, we had great sponsors. We had people making big donations. We had a lot of people there. We had raffle prizes, donations from the community. And it was such a fun energy and environment. And, really no way that I would have wanted to start off my experience on reality TV than being surrounded by a ton of people who are willing to throw money down for charity. So, it was really fun because it for me at least, it set the tone. I thought, okay, we'll do one. And then actually the very next one I met you at. So
the next
you remember
San Francisco.
Yeah, in San Francisco.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so Brianna hosted that one in San Francisco, and she went all out. We had cupcakes with little Juan Pablo heads on them. And
that was great. You guys rented a theater. It was
you're right.
Watched it in a theater, and I think it was off downtown San Francisco. It was a blast.
Yeah. So it started as I hosted one, and then Brianna hosted one. And then I got the harebrained idea, what if we did one every week? And, hosting a big viewing party every week can be a big undertaking. So sometimes, like I mentioned, one of them was I went to the Alpha Phi house and watched it with those girls. And then I sold t-shirts. So I got t-shirts screen printed that were Alpha Phi themed, and also Cat on the Bachelor themed, which at the time I was like, is this self-gratuitous? And then I was like, well, if they're going to buy them and I can have a profit for charity, we'll do it. And so sold t-shirts.
So it's not like what's your price? Like, what's the number? It's like, is this going to raise money for charity? Yeah, I'll do that. Good for you.
Yeah. So it's become very much a passion project for me. And I owe a lot of the inspiration to Brianna because, I really did even then follow in her footsteps. So I did that during that season. I did a bunch of, charity viewing parties and different events and activities to raise money. And then that following spring, I actually did the Leukemia Lymphoma Society.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
All right.
We're going to get into that.
Okay.
So hang on just a second. So I want to know, what did it feel like for you to go through watching that season and throwing all of these fundraisers? What was that like?
It was really fulfilling in a way that I didn't expect, because the idea of being on TV, I think it means something different to everyone. And for me, it was really exposing and vulnerable, because this, we have no control over what version of us is shown on TV. And so it's a little harrowing thinking, okay, well, I'm just going to sit along my friends on our couch and watch what version of me they chose for this episode or for this season.
You don't know what's coming.
Yeah, you don't know your edit. I had an idea that I was at least going to have a good edit, because you talked earlier about do you go on for the wrong reasons or the right reasons? Mike Fleiss was very persistent when I said I wasn't going to do it. And he was like, you could be the next Bachelorette. You could be Dancing with the Stars. And so admittedly, when I left, I was like, I want a good adventure. And they said Dancing with the Stars. And I don't necessarily care about being the next Bachelorette, but as we've established, I really love dancing. And so that was definitely an attractive carrot to dangle for me. But, it's exposing. That was their hook. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I did not end up on Dancing with the Stars. So good hook for them. But yeah, I think as I was going through and having all of these people alongside me, I think their energy and enthusiasm was really inspiring. And seeing that while sometimes it can be, it feels a little shallow, or like you were talking about, there's a lot of like fun that's made and fun that's poked at people. I thought if I can be a part of, like, we're laughing together instead of they're laughing at me, and while we're doing that, we're raising money for a good cause, then any discomfort or excess vulnerability, or as Brene Brown talks about, vulnerability hangovers that I go through are going to be worth it, because I've been able to use that to do good for people that I wouldn't have otherwise been able to do.
You're just laying this out so beautifully about how that had such meaning for you, and how it was worth the ups and downs, or the vulnerability, or the the risk of what you're going to look like and all that stuff. And it's for you, as you've explained, like a very personally meaningful charity. Almost doesn't sound like the right word, like something that's personally meaningful. I love that. And where is that today?
Yeah, so
I don't want to be judgy, but this is why I think.
Oh, you mean for everyone? I thought you meant, what am I doing? I was like, okay, Larry, let me tell you. Hold on.
And where is it for you? What happened to you? You used to be such a philanthropist of a person. What happened to you? Where are you now? But it just strikes me. This is like the thing. Is like, it really struck me as you were telling the story on the podcast. I was like, we need to amplify this story, because this is not like, what's the dream of kids today, and as they're going on all the reality television, all this stuff. It's to like get big, famous, become an influencer, and use that to make money, and to have a following around, and I don't want to judge that, but I think, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, the pendulum swung a little too far, and as much as like social media is wonderful, and especially in the world that we live in today, where we're all isolated, and having to kind of dig into that isolation, being able to be connected, do things like this, like, that's wonderful. But we've gone so far into that online engagement that we forget that there's like humanity that has to bring us back a little towards the middle. And admittedly, I had huge high hopes when I was doing this. I thought, I was like, all right, I want to do a 501c3. I started branding it all as Bachelorette's Give Back. I started actually doing marketing for other events. If they wouldn't pay me, they would donate to charity. And so it's kind of fun, because I got a bunch of huge checks from that, and I finally donated, just like trashed my last one. But I started thinking, like, okay, well, what if I could get more people in the franchise, like, on this bandwagon? Because there is, and even I do see a world in which it could, you could marry the two today, because you don't have to give up what you're doing in terms of like your influencing and your paychecks and all of those sorts of things. But and maybe it's just the awareness of helping people realize how it can be to bring in a charitable and philanthropic component, where your presence can have a really big charitable impact.
Yeah, and I think, as we're kind of talking about this, to get other people, this special sauce is something that's personally meaningful. That's kind of part of like a mission and purpose. Like, you got, both of you, Brianna, and I didn't know that about her. Mr. Marine is so amazing, but it just seems that much more fulfilling for you and for her. Not only that you're doing good for the world, but that the experience that you have is that much richer, because you're giving to something that is personally meaningful. And I just think that's incredible. Think it's incredible. So good for you. Now, I'm getting more questions than we're going to have time for. All
right.
Let me throw two of them out there, and you can do what you want with it. I want to talk just for a minute about what your experience was like on the show. I can identify with a lot of things you're saying. I was on one night, no roses, and I was like, I'm either going to watch this locked in my bedroom and cry myself to sleep, or I'm going to throw a party. And I threw a big party, and I rented a limo, and 150 people came. I did not raise money. Awesome. You did the right thing. I was just like, I'm going out. When I came out, everybody cheered me. When she sent me home, they all booed her. It was great.
That's awesome.
But I want to hear a little more about your experience, like during the taping of the show. And the question with that one is, did you ever kiss Juan Pablo? You can answer that in just a second.
Okay.
And then the second thing that I want to ask you before, because I know you're going to lead into how you raised $175,000 for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, running for the man and woman of the year, woman of the year. That was kind of the
Woman of the year.
woman of the year. Well, obviously, you're not the man of the year, but that
Just so we're clear.
that was the campaign. I think we're clear. And the question around that one is, and you're starting to show this as you're telling the story, but you're starting to use, you said you started to brand it and market it. And then like, so you're starting, because I don't remember, what did the Bachelor, what was your little name? Cat 29, like
I was in medical sales.
You were
No,
medical
I was
sales.
medical sales.
Okay, good. Well, some of the pictures online, I think, had you
we're recording part 2.
Let's do part 2. This is really good,
so
by
you
the
don't see my
way.
suitcase. Good.
This is, yes, hide your suitcase. I've been going to say something the whole time. This has been really good because I'm learning so many things about. I was suspicious that there was a story here. Okay, so you have your experience. Last kind of question with that, and then I do want to know, like I was saying before, about how you started to use your skills to kind of blow this thing up and to get more into the charity fundraising thing and what that was about. Tell me how it was when you got sent home.
Oh, you know what's interesting, and it's funny you asked that on the heels of did I kiss him, because when I went onto the show, there were 2 things that I was like, okay, these are my like non-negotiables, if you will. I didn't want to be sucking face on national television. I didn't want to be like the makeout bandit. It wasn't that I was never planning on kissing him, but I was like, I feel uncomfortable that like my employer and my parents are going to watch, and my family, me watching me like sucking face with this guy. So that was something for me where I was like, all right, let me just not be that girl who's like always in his face.
So wait a minute. So that rule was like, what would that mean? Don't ever kiss him on a group date, or like don't like no prolonged making out periods. What exactly is that rule?
So it's interesting you asked that also, because I didn't really give myself any guidelines. I just said I don't want to be the makeout bandit. And I think if I had been really attracted to him and had a connection with him, I probably would have thrown that rule out the window. But I had no connection with him, so it was like, well, I and it was just kind of a funny like hang up that I had when I was leaving. I was like, gosh, this is gonna be weird for my family to have to like watch me like making out with someone on national television, right? That's just a weird thing to like wrap your mind around. And then the other thing, because I hadn't watched the show at all in preparation for going, I started watching just the rose ceremonies on YouTube. And I have a good girlfriend. This is really funny. I have a good girlfriend who watched every rose ceremony from all of the like 17 seasons before me and categorized the color that they were wearing. Or no, it wasn't at the rose ceremony. It was every first night, every limo entrance, and categorized. She had this spreadsheet on like what color you should wear and what gimmick you should do. So she's a brilliant statistician. And it turned out that she was right, because she said scent is really important. And so I made sure I wore perfume on the first night, even though they tell you not to. And one of the things Juan Pablo said when I met him was, oh, you smell good. So, but because we were watching, so we started watching those, limo entrances. And then that got me on the, okay, let me watch rose ceremonies for like attire inspiration for dresses. And I started seeing these girls getting sent home in minivans, right? And like, how devastating. You're being rejected on national television and you have to leave in a minivan. And I know that's so mundane and like a silly little thing, but I was like,
minivan.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for you. Like it's not good. So for me, I was like, I want to go home in a limo. That's what I really wanted. I wanted to go home in a limo. And so imagine my joy at getting sent home when I got to leave in a limo. And so that was the silver lining of when I got sent home, because I'd stayed long enough. The trick is you have to be on the season long enough in order to not get sent home in like a group where they're trying to funnel you out. Yeah.
Like Uber pickup thing where it's just
the Uber pool. Yeah, no one wants to be on the Uber pool.
Exactly. Like I feel bad enough, and now it's like I don't even get my own Uber. You're Uber pooling back to the airport. Get out of here as soon as possible.
Yeah. But it was sad, and it was a little, I totally got set up for it because it was me and one other girl, and I was like, they're like, who's going to go home? I was like, definitely not me. She's way younger. Like, I'm way more mature and sophisticated, and I'm going to stay. And, being like the last two standing and then not having your name called. It's funny because the first rose ceremony, Kylie, if you remember this, there was this like little drama because when he called my name, someone else went forward for my rose. And
Oh,
and I
perfect.
always thought, yeah, great drama. The producers didn't even have to like fabricate that. And I always wondered how that happened. I I didn't step forward when he called Chelsea's name, but there's like a little piece of you when someone's name, when they just start to utter it, like there's just two of us. I had this natural like motor reaction to start walking. And I didn't because that would have been some great embarrassing TV. And I had to leave. And I didn't even say anything to him because we really didn't have a connection. But it was interesting. You get in the limo and they have your producer in there with you. And I mean, you probably know this from your night, but they want you to cry. And so they very much were saying like very sweet things. They said, "Oh, we need some footage of you just looking out the window. So I'm going to sit here and hold your hand and tell you everything I know to be good and true about you." And I think what I am proud about in my leaving is when you watch my limo exit, I was crying. I was really sad to leave Charlene, who was one of my near and dear friends on the show. And there was something I said, and I can't even remember to quote myself directly, but I think it was something about like, I'm just tired of not being enough. And that was a
Mhm.
moment of actual real vulnerability for me, and that was probably one of the few times on the show where I let my guard down. And I
Oh,
think it
wow.
is something as a woman in the dating world where you always feel, whether you're on the Bachelor or not, there's always something, especially now with social media and all of the dating apps, like the grass can always be greener. And
Yeah.
it can be really hard to be a female who feels like you're a strong female that wants to have a relationship but that hasn't been able to find that. And sometimes you do kind of start to get those icky, like the stinking thinking that sneaks in of like, maybe it's me and maybe I'm just not good enough. So getting sent home is definitely not fun. But as much as I cringe when I watch that, I am at least proud that in that moment, like I let myself be real. And I feel like I was real the entire show, but that I didn't try to just like pretend or be something that I wasn't, or say something I didn't feel.
God, I love this interview more and more. And I don't think people can appreciate that vulnerability that you showed was watched by millions. Like it is, if you feel some shame from that or you have some kind of emotional response that's negative, it is like dialed up so much more with
Yeah.
that pressure cooker of these cameras in your face, and then you're feeling this feeling of rejection or whatever it is. I really admire that. That's I love hearing that. I didn't expect to hear you say that about that. This is so
Yeah.
good. This is so good. Okay, so show's done. You start getting on the. Let's jump back into. You're starting to raise money, and you're like, oh wow, I'm able to raise some money, and for a good cause. I like.
Hmm.
Get me back into that story and how that developed, and got you to a point where you're like, I want to make a commitment to this big campaign to run and raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. Is that the name of it?
Yep. Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, LLS, which is probably how I'll refer to it, just because that's a mouthful. But I think it truly came from, and it was events like the one that you and I met at in San Francisco, where everyone was so like just encouraging and excited to be there, and really like caught up in the moment too. I mean, that made the show airing a really fun experience for me because I got to experience it with all these people that were also really excited. But then seeing where this started to steamroll, and even doing, sometimes we did the smaller events, sometimes it was a large scale viewing party, and and actually had two viewing parties in San Francisco. I don't know if you were at the one where I got sent home, at the Brickyard of all
I
places.
No, I did not make that one. I only went to the first one. I unfortunately
Yeah,
I don't remember why, but
it's okay. I won't hold it against you. But
you
so
had plenty of gentlemen fans of you in San Francisco, I am sure.
I
Fine.
actually started dating someone in San Francisco right after that. But anyway, I digress. So it started in the airing of the season where it's like it was just like the little spark of idea that started, we fanned the flames, and a lot of it was like people kept showing up and paying for tickets and donating to charity and being willing to be a part of like this movement. And
Mm-hmm.
so seeing that,
Oh, shoot. We lost you. And you are paused. And it's not a bad, you know, pose where you're paused. Let me see what I can do about this. We may need to stop this recording. Are you going to call me back? What are we doing? I'm going to stop this and we're going to go part 3. I might leave you on this just one more second to make fun of you, and then we'll go to part 3. I'm a bad host. Okay, perfect. Part 3. Where were you?
so yeah, I think what I was saying is just, where it began. Geez, that's like the Midwesterner in me. So where it started
Where to
in
begin?
terms of, yeah, where to begin. It was just like, it was having all these events and having people that were doubling down and excited to partner. And really, Brianna was a huge motivator in this because it became something that was really fun for she and I and our close girlfriends. And then we incorporated, and I know I was saying I started dating someone in San Francisco, but we incorporated all of these San Francisco people. I mean, I was in the city so much that I started getting invitations from her friends of like, oh yeah, we'll tell Kat we're doing this next weekend. And she's like, but she doesn't actually live here. So
You were still living in
I
Phoenix.
was still living in Phoenix, and I would come up for the events when we were hosting them, and I came up and judged Mr. Marina, and it was the excitement and almost the exhilaration of that, of being able to be part of something that became to be bigger than all of us, right? That was doing something for other people because yes, again, I could have a following on Instagram and I didn't know enough about that, but my work skills helped me learn how to, make quick connections and build trust and really almost like galvanize a group of people. I know how to inspire and lead and motivate when people are in the flesh. The digital community thing wasn't really my wheelhouse, and so that's where hosting these events and being able to create this sense of community was something that was really, it became almost inspirational for myself. Like I was motivated by it, and it also just, energy begets energy, right? And it just starts to grow and inspire a life of its own. And so that's where it started. It started with, the viewing parties for our season. And then that next spring, I got a phone call from the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society saying, hey, we'd like you to run for Woman of the Year. And again, Brianna, who's been a huge inspiration in all of this, she ran for Woman of the Year. And
I
that's
remember
in
that.
San Francisco. And that's actually where Mr. Marina came from. And so I had already had this window into what LLS is and Woman of the Year, which is a 10-week, for anyone who doesn't know, Man and Woman of the Year is a 10-week fundraising campaign where essentially as a candidate for Woman or Man of the Year, you are tasked with raising as much money as humanly possible in that 10-week period by really any means necessary, as long as it's legal. And I saw what Brianna was able to do, and she raised an incredible amount. She raised $275,000 in 10 weeks.
That's a
I didn't do
lot of
that.
money.
I
Like
raised
so much money.
it's a crazy amount of money. And I raised in my first, because I actually did it twice. So my first 10 weeks, I raised $115,000 in 10
Oh
weeks.
my God.
Yeah. And
That's
it was on the heels of the show, and it was people that my network just, kind of came alongside me and helped lifted me up and helped drive towards this goal. And the goal, and the reason why that number is so important, is for every $50,000 that you raise, you get to endow a research grant. And so what that looks like is you get to name the grant,
wow.
and you get to decide what cancer it goes, the research funds goes towards, because there's a lot of different types of leukemia and blood cancers. And so, I got to name 2 grants in my mom's honor, and to just have that experience of knowing that the random experience that the Bachelor is, that random experience then helped me create a community that could raise that much money and that could look beyond the flash of social media or of, our world and the busyness and fast paced and like the who done it and what's in it for me of all of it, and look to make a difference in the lives of others, because blood cancer is something that impacts so many people, and a lot of the research that LLS does helps provide pivotal research and new directions for other cancer therapies outside of blood cancers and leukemia. And so, it's an incredible organization to be a part of. I'm actually still on the board of LLS. And like I said, you can run as an all-star. And so 2 years later, I did it all again. It was way harder the second time because I didn't have the platform that I had from The Bachelor, right? Because I was further away from that. And so I had already kind of cashed out my network, and I had, just made it to be something where, I was doing it again. And I have a lot of tips for anyone who does do it again. So if you're thinking of being an LLS All-Star, call me first. But, doing it again was a lot harder for sure. And I raised another $50,000 on the heels of that. And we raised 20 grand in the first chunk of viewing parties that I did right after, or I guess during the airing of our season. And so all in, it was like 175 grand for charity.
That is so awesome.
Yeah.
So like you just said, that's three, what did you call it, where it's $50,000?
Oh, so the endowments. Yep.
Endowments.
So 3 endowments. Yeah.
What did it feel like when you got to name an endowment for cancer? Because I'm guessing when I hear endowment, I hear money that gets put away and it's saved, and then you try not to tap into the principle of it, and the interest that it generates funds cancer research forever. It's like contributing to this thing will live forever to fight this cause. What did that feel like to name 3 of those? Remember that?
Yeah, I would say kind of, it's almost overwhelming in the moment of realizing that's the magnitude of money that's been raised and that's what you're going to be able to do. And I think what was most impactful for me was actually when I they give you an award that, like, after you've named your grant and picked what cancer it's going towards, then you get a plaque that memorializes that. And so being able to get that and then present that to my mom, that was a really just like once in a lifetime experience.
Tell me more about it. What did that feel like?
It felt like, I think probably for all of us, we have, our parents raise us and they invest so much in us. And as adults, I hadn't found an opportunity to be able to, for my parents to reinvest. And, watching my mom fight as she did through her cancer. And she was someone, she didn't want any help. She didn't want us to come back for her chemo. She's like, I got this. You're good. Go live your life. And knowing that I was able to help women and men like her and to help her leave a legacy it was really moving. And it's fun because it's something that she displays on the mantle at home. And so, to go back home and see it and to know that really it started because I have awesome, incredibly inspirational people around me, like Brianna and like yourself, like strangers who are willing to just like rally around me and say, let's do this. Let's raise some money for a good cause, while having a good laugh.
How did that affect your relationship with your mom?
My mom and I have always had a good relationship. And I think it was something that for her, she's not a woman of many words, but what the neatest experience was during the first gala. You do a big like finale gala for LLS. And during that first gala, she got to walk out with me because each candidate is presented by a survivor. So they're escorted by a survivor. And so my mom got to escort me, which that was a moment. I have that photo framed, that'll forever be one that's above the fireplace. But I know that for her, that was a really special moment.
Jesus, you're making me cry. Oh, that's good. Okay. Talk about something else while I put myself
No, and I think, for me, it's like it's a display of
uh,
human spirit, right? Of like that a bunch of people I didn't know, a network in San Francisco that didn't know me other than like Brianna's friend Kat, to rally around an individual, yes, with like somewhat of a superficial start of the cause, but then to really dig deeper and create a movement that changes the lives of the people around it. Because the best thing is to know that, as you said, that endowment, the advances that are made, the research that's done, all of the changes, and any little thing that happens, whether it's the money I donated to the Breast Cancer Research Center, like that perpetuates, and the trickle down effect of who that can impact, and maybe someone's life that's changed as a result of it, and maybe a patient who gets some patient assistance and they're just more comfortable during their time and during their treatment. And that's actually what gives me goosebumps. And so it's something that I'm really grateful for, and it's experience I wouldn't have had without The Bachelor. And that's, something that I would love to, in a perfect world, if it's like, okay, what's the call to action and what can we change and what can we do? I'd love to do what I set out to do 6 years ago, which was mobilize the contestants in a way that the impact of the franchise can start to be something more than just, you know, Bachelor and wine nights on Monday nights, or I guess Tuesday nights now.
God, that's so smart. I think that's such a win-win for them. I think that would only help the Bachelor. Um, God, I had some things that I wanted to ask you, but you got me all emotional, Kat.
I'm sorry. But
No,
it's
don't
good,
apologize.
right? Feelings are good.
That's
Yeah.
the real stuff. Okay, so this is my question for you. Give me the tips if somebody either wanted to run for Man or Woman of the Year for LLS,
Mm-hmm.
or if somebody was going to go on The Bachelor, Bachelorette, some reality TV ride, and they wanted to do something like you did. If you were going to do that again, how would you do it? What tips would you give them?
I think it's something that you touched on early on, is you have to, I'd love everyone to do the LLS, 10-week Man, Woman of the Year when they come off The Bachelor, but it has to be a cause that you have a connection with. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a personal connection. Like one of my girlfriends, who's a former board member with LLS, had, family friends that were affected, or friends of friends. You have to find something that's meaningful for you. But there's a ton of really great causes that money can be donated, towards, that time can be donated towards. Maybe it's just as simple as organizing, there's like those backpack snack programs where you go and pack food for kids to take home on Fridays, because the last meal that they get is lunch at school on Friday. And so they have a backpack full of food for the weekend. And, deciding if this is something that you're interested in, you really have to decide what is going to make it something where you want to keep pushing forward, because it's not easy, and the time and dedication that you have to put towards it is a lot. And you're going to, if you really want to raise a lot of money, you're asking people for a lot, and you're making them uncomfortable and big asks, and you have to be ready to be persistent. So it's so much easier to do that if it's something that you believe in, that you feel moved by or inspired by. And that's really the biggest thing. Past that, it's all logistics, putting the right people around you. I mean, I did a version of Mr. Marina and Mr. Old Town. To Brianna's credit, she like gave me the script and said, run with it. It's not always recreating the wheel. Sometimes it's taking the wheel that you've seen before and finding how do you optimize it even further. So I would love, if there's anyone out there who's thinking about LLS, or former contestant or reality TV show who's interested in that fundraising and philanthropy world, I'd love to connect with them.
Okay, so number one is find a cause that they're passionate about, personally meaningful, and then number two, tell me some of the logistics. Like, imagine somebody's listening to this and they're like taking notes of like, okay, they've got their cause, and then what's step two? Like, sounds like finding a mentor, or like a Brianna who has done something like this that's been successful. I want you to explain the Mr. Marina and the Mr. Old Town in just a second, but give me like steps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of like the most important things if you were going to do this again. So like find a cause you're passionate about. 2 is it sounds like building community, but a mentor, somebody that's done this
Mm-hmm.
before. Give me a couple other things on that list.
Yeah. I mean, certainly the cause, the mentor. It's almost, and I think where I was equipped to do this well was I translated my business world to my charity world and said, okay, what would I do if I'm starting a new job? I'm going to figure out what I need to do. Like what role am I excited about? I'm applying for a job, right? And then I'm going to go and find someone who's done that job before and who can tell me how to be really successful at it. And so I was lucky and had Brianna kind of as a built-in mentor, but I had a lot of other people that had been affiliated with fundraising and charity events. And then past that, it's really understanding what your target is. I had you know, for the fundraising we did when the season was airing, I didn't really have a target. That kind of was like the spark that just kept growing.
You mean like
But
a
with
goal, a fundraising goal, a number, $100,000 or something? Is that what you mean?
a number, but also like where you're headed, just like in business, you can't be like, I want to start, for you, I want to start my own clinic. You got to understand, okay, well, what do you want that clinic to look like? What is that? What is the takeaway for patients? What's your value proposition? And so knowing where you're going, right? And value proposition is a little much in charity because that's built for you. Your value proposition is the organization that you're donating for, but you have to know, okay, where do I want to take this? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a dollar amount, because originally with my LLS campaign, I said I want to raise $50,000, and then you get inside of it and you create the momentum and you allow it to come to life in a way that's really fun and exciting and helps create that sense of community. And so it's, understanding what your cause is, finding your mentor, knowing where you're heading, and then just mobilizing the people around you. Because if you're doing this by yourself, it's also not fun. And it's important for this to be, it will be so much more beneficial and so much more sustainable if it's something that's really enjoyable too. And bringing people along for the ride is a really fun thing. The last thing I'll say is you have to always be willing to ask for help. And I was lucky to have people around me that I'm not the best at asking for help, but they would say, okay, we're going to do this for you. So knowing who to keep around you in addition to your mentor, who's going to help be your ride or die, and that is really important.
God, I love this so much.
Yeah.
So, because we're like reverse engineering this. So I'm going to put it in my own words. You just listed them out. I'm going to add one other one that you said
Okay.
but didn't. So number one, I would say is find a personally meaningful cause, something that is going to give you like the inner inspiration, passion. 2 is I like the mentor. 3, which you are demonstrating as you're talking about this. 3 is asking yourself the questions, how can your talents and skills, how can you use that in the campaign? So you're demonstrating like your business like as you went into number 4, which was like, what's your goal? And then you used a whole bunch of business words that I was like, I don't know what that means, but you know what you're talking about. And then I like number 5, make it social and fun and do that. That's like a great, I know there's got to be somebody out there who's like watching this, and this is like the starter for going out and doing this thing and having a more, I think it's more meaningful, not only like for the world, but then like, so here's a question to you, like compare and contrast that big ride that you went on versus if you wouldn't have done all the fundraising. Like, what would that have been like? This added so much more to your.
Yeah, it just, the depth of it, like the fundraising allowed, for me, it made my Bachelor Nation story something that I am like inexplicably proud of, that I look at as a really special piece of my journey in life. I think there's some people that are like, oh gosh, I can't believe I went on The Bachelor. I tied it to something that was really important to me, and I made it something that was bigger than just me being on TV. And I'm grateful for that. And it showed me, it helped bring to light in me, rather, I should say, this really important focus on helping others. It's always something that I've done, and I find all these different ways of how do I how do I make things around me better for other people? That's just who I am. I'm always like, I'm a giver, but it allowed me to see the power of community and the power of intention. Because when you put those two things together and you have the right people around you, and there's a reason why you're doing what you're doing, you really can't fail. And it was pretty incredible.
I just like, you should write a book.
Well, I'm gonna have you help me with that. How about that, Dr. Larry?
Like this conversation, you could turn what you said in this into the script. Have literally somebody write this down at the script. That's your skeleton, and then you go from there. I'm inspired having this conversation with you, and all these wheels are turning, and I'm like, this is why I do this, is to put these kind of things out there. I just love. There's so many things about this story that I didn't know, including that you didn't kiss Juan Pablo. I was like,
I never, and I made it so far.
Probably kissed Juan Pablo.
It's a moment of pride for me because I made it so far, and that's probably why leaving was so hard, because the producers fill your head with like where you're going next, but I really couldn't be more grateful for my journey in the Bachelor world, and I'm just grateful for the connections, like to people like yourself, and the ability to get to share this story, which is so important to me. But I think if I can inspire one other contestant to go out there and do something, and not even a contestant, like anyone who's listening to this and just wants to get more involved, it doesn't have to be $175,000. It's as simple as deciding this holiday season that COVID has impacted so many people in our communities. Maybe it's time to sponsor a family or make a donation to the food bank, or buy some gifts for St. Jude, because the money that I have spent, and let me tell you, I spent so much money throwing these events and doing all this charity work. It's only came back to me tenfold in terms of my professional success and these other opportunities that I've had. But it's also been some of the best money. I mean, I'd throw money at doing things for others and advancing and improving the quality of life for other people any day over anything. And let me tell you, I love a good purse purchase. So
I'm gonna kind of just throw something out there. You never know what happens in the year. Oh, let me say this before I plant this seed. Very manipulative seed, but I'm gonna plant it for you. Because it's inside of you. We've all heard you saying this over and over, and I'm suspicious that there's something there. But one of the things that you were when we were talking about the endowment and the $50,000, and that is something that will live on, which I think we're all going to die, right? And the idea that we've done something that will outlive us, that's whether it's children or in this case, like a cause that's going to do good even when you're gone. That's just awesome. But is this idea of the ripple effect, and you're never going to know the effect of that, and who that touches and who that helps and what contribution that made to some life-saving something that down the road makes a difference somewhere. But that doesn't mean that it's any less real or that it doesn't matter. And I think that's a great example. Oh, you did it. I lost you.
I'm here.
I think it's a great, every time Skype's like, bro, you're talking too much. But I think it's a great example of a kind of real practical faith of knowing, like a deep knowing that what you do is so meaningful, even though you may not see exactly how that thing happens. Okay, that was super deep. Here's the manipulative thing. Here's the seed. You never know. One day you may go on Dancing with the Stars. You never know. And then if you do, you've got the playbook about how to take that and, make it something bigger than it is. Here's my final question for you. And thank you very much as we kind of close this. And of course, like if you have anything else you want to say, absolutely feel free. Number one, where can people reach out and connect with you? Instagram, what would you
Yeah, Instagram is the easiest, at Cat Hurd. All of my social is just at Cat Hurd. And there's also a soon to be coming blog, The Cougar Den, that's a shout out to all of the ladies in Bachelor Nation who are over 30 and who maybe feel like they're not a part of the crew, because it's definitely skewing younger these days. But it's actually an effort, Brianna and I. So speaking of the devil, we'll certainly talk about philanthropy, but we're going to talk about life as a 30-something, single, not single, all of that good stuff. So that's coming down the pike.
Tell me a little bit more about that, the Cougar Den, and where did that idea come from? You were telling me about it earlier.
So yeah, it
It's
came from and I forget because I still am not super tapped into Bachelor Nation, but it came from one of the seasons that it was Tracy Shopoff and I think Corinne, and so there were I want to say it was Colton's season, but some women that were over 30, and the young girls were calling them, oh, that's the Cougars and that's the Cougar Den over there, and really trash talking these women that were single and over 30. And I have to say, I mean, I think that my like being single and being just like without children and traveling and experiencing life in the way that I have since turning 30 has been so much more fun than my 20s ever were. So it's going to be a spin on, the Cougars used to be the like old ladies trying to get the young guys, and this is going to be the old ladies realizing they're not so old after all.
that sounds great. And are you guys writing, or are you gonna do like this sounds like a podcast.
I mean, I'm going to have to consult you on that one, but you're right. It does sound like a podcast, but it's going to start. We have the web domain. It's the cougarden.co, because the .com was taken. But yeah, maybe the podcast will be coming soon.
That'd be fun to listen to you and Brianna talk about that stuff. I'd
Yeah.
love to tune into that. Okay, here's my last question for you. So you did all this leukemia, lymphoma stuff, but that was like years ago.
hmm
Are you ever going to do it again? Do you like, how does that fit in with who you are now and your job and what's going on these days?
Yeah. So it's a great question. And like I said, it's something that's still very near and dear to my heart. So I'm an active board member for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. And, I'm always looking to find other ways and other charities to be a part of as well. So I participate with everything that LLS does. Maybe I'll run for Women of the Year again. Typically, you do your year and then your all-star year. Which that was like, gosh, 3 years ago now, my all-star year. So we'll see. I think that's the best part about what I found in charity work is it doesn't have to just be LLS. There's so many different and really worthwhile organizations that need our help, need our funds. And, I'd love if any of your listeners and viewers have suggestions or causes that are near and dear to their heart and local organizations, to connect with me and reach out and provide those recommendations, because I'm always looking for my next project.
Maybe your next inspiration is right around the corner. Who knows?
Yeah.
Is there Thank you so much for doing this.
Of course, it's so fun.
It was really good. I am inspired. That's why I love doing these things. So I'm probably gonna write a little blog. These videos will of course come out. I'm gonna stuff it into the podcast, so it's gonna go on all the little ways. But this was so good, and I'm so thankful that you were willing to tell me the story, and it's a great one. And I certainly hope that it inspires people to think about how powerful the opportunities we have and how they can be used for good. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that you want to say? Did we cover it?
Yeah, I mean, we covered a lot of ground, and I think the last and the just most meaningful piece of all of this is understanding the capacity for good that we all have in our world. And it doesn't have to be a big event. It doesn't have to be a ton of people around you, but it's the little things that we choose to do to help the communities around us that really make a big difference. So I hope everyone who's listening goes out and does one thing this week, this month, this year. 2020 has been weird as hell, but I guarantee you it will be a little bit better if you do something to help someone else out. So thanks, Dr. Larry. I appreciate it. It was fun.
That's great. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording. For everybody that watched this, thank you for watching. You can always reach out to me at Dr. Larry Burchett on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Give me your comments on this. If there's other people that you think would be a great interview, like Ms. Cat Hurd, let me know. Thank you for listening. As always, stay safe, stay sane, do your part. I'll see you next time.